Imagine living in a town where the local government's thinking about buying up property for almost twice what it's actually worth.
Wow.
That's what went down in Los Alamos County, New Mexico.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about this.
Yeah, and it sparked some serious debate about, what the role of local government should be when it comes to shaping the community.
It's a great question, isn't it? Like, where do you draw the line?
Right. And that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Right.
A whole stack of news articles and opinion pieces about two major decisions the Los Alamos County Council had to make.
I'm ready.
So the first one, this was a plan to create a Community Broadband Network,
Okay.
or CBN for short.
Gotcha.
And this was no small potatoes.
How much are we talking?
A $50 million project to get fiber-optic internet to every single home and business in the county.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Yeah, fiber for everyone sounds pretty amazing on the surface,
Sure,
right?
sure.
But I could also see how a project that size could raise some eyebrows.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you're dealing with taxpayer money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the second decision, the potential purchase of 3 properties on Diamond Drive
Okay, I remember this one.
for $9.8 million.
Yeah, that number sounds familiar.
But here's the kicker. Those properties were only assessed at $5.6 million.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big difference.
So you can imagine people were not happy.
Not happy at all, I bet.
So let's start with that Community Broadband Network, the CBN.
Okay, sounds good.
What got the ball rolling on this? Was it like a sudden thing, or is it part of a bigger picture?
No, it wasn't a spur of the moment kind of thing.
Yeah.
They actually had a CBN in their strategic plan going all the way back to 2021.
Oh, wow. So they've been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah, they've been laying the groundwork.
Interesting. So they even got a $2 million state grant to work with the nearby San Ildefonso Pueblo on something they're calling a middle mile project
Yeah, basically they're bringing in another fiber optic line.
to the area.
Yeah, to make sure there's backup and, that it can handle any problems.
So it sounds like they were really in it for the long haul.
Definitely.
And not just thinking about Los Alamos itself,
Right.
but about working with their neighbors too.
Exactly.
Smart.
Yeah.
So aside from the obvious, super fast internet
Yeah.
appeal, what were some of the other arguments for the CBN?
Well, one of the big selling points was affordability.
Okay, how so?
The Coshawk County estimated that people could get decent internet speeds for something like $50 a month.
Oh, wow, that's not a...
And, with options to upgrade to gigabit speeds if you need it.
Sure.
And this is important, it would be an open access network.
Needing.
You wouldn't be stuck with just one internet provider.
So you have choices.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. But even spread out over time, $50 million is still a hefty price tag.
It is.
How are they going to pay for this thing?
They were planning on using something called gross receipts, tax revenue bonds,
Okay.
to cover the cost.
And how much was the total cost?
Well, they estimated about $35 million for the design and construction.
Okay.
And then another $15.9 million for just, keeping it running.
So day-to-day operations.
Yeah, and the good news for residents was that this type of funding wouldn't directly lead to higher taxes.
That is good news.
Yeah.
So no immediate tax hikes, which probably helped with getting people on board.
Probably.
But I'm guessing a project this big, it wasn't all smooth sailing.
You'd be right.
What kind of pushback did they get? Any concerns from folks in town or businesses?
Oh, yeah, there were definitely concerns.
Like what?
One of the most vocal was Los Alamos Network,
And they are.
a local internet provider.
Oh.
They've been serving the community for years.
So they were probably worried about competition.
Yeah, they were definitely concerned about the impact of this government-run network on their business.
Makes sense. I mean, they've already invested a lot in their own infrastructure.
Yeah, it's one thing to compete with other private companies,
Right.
but going up against something funded by the government, that's a whole different ballgame.
So did the county council do anything to address these concerns?
They did. They actually reassured Los Alamos Network that they would deal with the competition issues during the design phase of the CBN.
How would they do that?
Well, they talked about possibly collaborating
Okay.
or even reimbursing them financially if the CBN had a negative impact.
So trying to find a way to work with them, not just push them aside.
Exactly.
Sounds like they were trying to be fair.
Yeah, they're definitely making an effort.
So even with the initial pushback, the council seemed pretty set on this project.
Yeah, they did.
Did they end up giving it the green light?
They did, and it wasn't even close.
Really?
The vote was 6-0
Wow. Unanimous.
in favor of approving both the design and construction contract
Wow.
and the separate contract for running the network once it's built.
A unanimous vote on something this big, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, shows how much they believed in it.
But I have a feeling things weren't quite as smooth when it came to those dime drive properties.
You think?
I think that's where we'll see some fireworks.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up. That's where things get really interesting.
All right, listeners, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll dive headfirst into that diamond drive debate.
Can't wait.
We'll see how this seemingly simple purchase turned into a full-blown community showdown.
It's going to be good.
All right, we're back and ready to dig into this whole diamond drive situation.
Yeah, this is where things get spicy.
You mentioned a firestorm earlier.
I did.
I'm guessing folks weren't too thrilled about the Iron County potentially shelling out nearly twice the assessed value for those properties.
You got it. People were not happy.
So remind us again, what were these properties and why did they cause such a ruckus?
So it was 3 pieces of land on Diamond Drive.
Okay.
The old Ed's Market building.
Oh, yeah, I remember that place.
A former gas station, and then just an empty lot.
And together they were worth about $5.6 million.
That's what they were assessed at, yeah.
But the Iron County was thinking of paying almost $10 million.
$9.8 million to be exact.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
It is.
So what was the county's thinking? Why spend so much more than what it's worth? What were they going to do with it all?
Well, the county manager, he argued that the location was really strategic.
Okay.
He said it could help address a bunch of needs in the community.
Like what?
Well, they wanted to create a social services hub.
Okay, so like a one-stop shop for those kinds of services.
Exactly, something residents had been asking for ages.
Makes sense. And was there anything else?
Yeah, they also talked about adding some much-needed housing.
Okay, that's always a hot topic.
It is.
Especially in a place like Los Alamos.
And maybe even some retail space to kind of boost the local economy.
It sounds like they were trying to hit a lot of birds with one stone.
Yeah, trying to be comprehensive.
But something tells me it wasn't that simple.
Not even close.
So what went wrong? Why were people so upset?
Well, a lot of people felt like it came out of nowhere.
Blindsided.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing was rushed, and they didn't trust the county to actually manage a project that big.
Especially with that price tag.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people saw it as reckless spending.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially in a place where the cost of living is already so high.
Exactly. It's like, do we really need to be throwing money around like this?
So was it just the price, or was there something else feeding this distrust?
Well, a lot of the local developers weren't too happy either.
They often have to deal with the county's permitting process, right?
All the time. And they had some stories about how the county wasn't always the easiest to work with.
Like what?
Oh, bureaucratic hurdles, long delays, just a general feeling that the county wasn't very business friendly.
Okay, so there's this history of frustration.
Definitely.
And this Diamond Drive thing just kind of brought it all to a head.
Yeah, it became a lightning rod for all those pent-up feelings.
So it wasn't just people grumbling amongst themselves.
Nope, it got organized.
Really? How so?
Remember that firestorm I mentioned?
I do.
Well, it took the form of a brand new group,
What was it called?
the Los Alamos Local Business Coalition,
Pitchy.
or LALBC for short.
Gotcha. So they were basically the voice of the opposition.
Yeah, they channeled all those concerns people had and pushed for a more transparent and accountable process.
Okay, so we've got this organized group fighting the purchase.
Right.
What were some of their main points? How did they try to convince people and sway the council?
Well, they made some really good points.
Like what?
They said the county didn't even have a solid plan for what they were going to do with the properties.
Okay, that's a valid concern.
And they worried about the people who are already renting in those places, like the old Ed's Market building.
What about them?
Well, they might not be able to afford rent in a fancy new development.
Right, so there's a risk of pushing people out.
Exactly. And the LALBC argued that the county ban these properties could actually hurt existing businesses.
By creating unfair competition.
Exactly.
So they were tapping into economic concerns
Yeah.
and social concerns about affordability and displacement.
Hitting it from all angles.
Did they do anything specific to get their message out?
Oh, yeah, they went all out.
Really?
Petitions, letters to the editor, speaking at public meetings. They even organized a big forum.
Wow. Sounds like they were working overtime.
They were serious about this.
So did the county council respond to all this pressure? Did they even acknowledge the concerns?
At first, it didn't look like they were budging.
Really?
The first vote to just say no to the whole thing, it actually failed.
Oh, wow.
But the LALBC, they kept pushing.
They're fair.
And they managed to get the final vote postponed.
Okay, so they bought themselves some time.
Yeah, more time to make their case.
And rally support.
Exactly.
So they won a small victory, but the battle wasn't over.
not by a long shot.
What happened next? The public opinion keeps shifting against the purchase.
It did, yeah. And the LALBC, they got even more focused.
How so?
They kept hammering home those points about transparency and that rushed timeline.
Right, which played into that existing distrust.
Big time.
And they kept reminding everyone about that crazy price tag and how the LA County didn't really have a clear plan.
Yeah, it made people wonder, are they really looking out for us?
So was there anyone on the other side? Anyone actually in favor of the purchase?
There were a few voices.
Anyone we know?
Yeah, Jill Lang, the owner of Simizdat Bookstore and Tea House.
Oh, yeah, I love that place.
She actually wrote a really interesting piece.
What did she say?
She agreed that the price was high, but argued that the government shouldn't always be focused on making a profit.
Okay.
She said they have a duty to invest in the community, even if it costs a little more.
So she was coming at it from a different angle.
Yeah, she was thinking about the bigger picture.
That's a good point. It's not always just about dollars and cents.
Exactly.
So we've got a community divided,
Yeah.
a strong opposition movement, and a county council feeling the heat.
Yeah, the pressure was on.
What happened when it finally came time for that final vote?
Well, the council actually listened.
They did.
They did. They voted 5-2 to reject the Diamond Drive purchase.
Wow, the people spoke. A victory for the LARBC and everyone who fought against it.
It was pretty amazing to see.
But it wasn't just about winning that vote, right?
No, it was about something bigger.
What did the LALBC do after the decision?
Well, they were really classy about it.
How so?
They thanked the council for listening to the community,
Nice.
and they said they were ready to work with the county to find other solutions.
With a social services hub.
Yeah, and for making Los Alamos a better place for businesses.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, they weren't just trying to cause trouble.
They wanted to be part of the solution.
Exactly.
So this whole episode raises some big questions, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
About how local government and citizens should interact.
It's a complex relationship.
It is.
Yeah.
What do you think? So we've spent all this time talking about these two big decisions in Los Alamos County.
Yeah, the Community Broadband Network and that whole Diamond Drive thing.
Right, both of them really stirred things up.
They did.
Showed us what the community cares about, what they're worried about, their hopes for the future.
It's like a microcosm of what so many towns are going through, trying to balance growth with keeping their identity.
Exactly. And as we wrap this up, I'm really curious about the long-term effects of these decisions.
Yeah, what's the lasting impact on Los Alamos, both economically and socially?
What do you think?
Well, it's always tough to say, for sure. Yeah. But we can look for some hints.
Okay, so let's start with the CBN.
If it works the way they're hoping, it could be huge for Los Alamos.
How so?
It could attract new businesses, create jobs, make it a more attractive place to live.
Especially for those who can work remotely.
Exactly, those folks who can work from anywhere.
Makes sense.
And anyone who relies on a good internet connection, which is pretty much everyone these days.
But there are potential downsides too, right? Like we talk about with Los Alamos Network and their concern.
Oh yeah, there's always a chance of unintended consequences.
Especially with something this big.
Right, so the county's got to be careful.
About what?
How they manage those risks.
And how do they do that?
Well, they've talked about collaborating more, maybe even giving some financial help to businesses that are negatively affected.
So like those reimbursements they mentioned?
Yeah, and they really need to keep those lines of communication open with local businesses.
Make sure they're part of the process?
Yeah, not just telling them what's happening, but actually listening to their concerns.
So it's not just about the technology itself.
No way.
It's about how they handle the human side of things.
Exactly. Building relationships, working together, that's what will make it or break it.
Okay, so that's the CBN. And what about Diamond Drive?
Well, even though the purchase didn't go through,
Right.
I think the community's reaction was a really important moment.
How so?
It showed that people are paying attention, they're informed, and they're ready to stand up for what they believe in.
The LALBC was really impressive.
They were.
The way they organized, got their message out, and really pushed for transparency and accountability.
And they proved that even a small group can have a big impact.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What can they learn from all of this, even if they're not in Los Alamos?
Well, first of all, pay attention to what's happening in your own community.
Right. Don't just assume someone else is handling it.
Exactly. Go to those town meetings, ask questions, make your voice heard.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Exactly. Even if you think you're the only one who feels that way.
The LALBC showed us what can happen when people come together.
And be open to hearing other perspectives.
Even if you disagree.
Yeah, it's easy to just stick with people who think like you.
Right.
But real change happens when you listen to different viewpoints, find some common ground.
It's all about having those tough conversations.
It is, and these local decisions, they might seem small.
But they add up.
They do. They shape our communities, our businesses, our lives.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Making our communities the best they can be.
Well said. It's been a fascinating look at Los Alamos County. We've seen how technology development and citizen engagement all come together.
And sometimes clash.
True. But that's how we learn and grow.
That's how we build a better future.
We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive, and we hope it's inspired you to get involved in your own community.
Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
Thanks for listening.